amidst the battle. And I know love will overcome hatred. Oh yeah, living in the positive. Oh children, let not your hearts be troubled. Wipe away your tears and fears. Cause I know love will conquer evil. Oh, oh yeah. And even through my darkest nights, oh, fear not, Jah is on my side to protect I. Oh yeah. And even though the roads are against side, Lord, 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 yeah. Fear not, though my chances are slim, yet my hopes are so high. Living in the positive, and I know good will conquer evil. Jah is here amidst the battle, and I know love will overcome hatred. Oh yeah, living in the positive. Oh children, let not your hearts be troubled. Wipe away your tears and fears. Cause I know love will conquer evil. Oh. Oh, oh, yeah. Even when my burden gets heavy to carry, oh, yeah. And sorrows become my best friend, then no one left me be. Oh, yeah. And even when 10,000 foes set themselves against life, and fools say that my chances are slim, yet my hopes are so high. Living in the positive, and I know good.
Good evening. Good evening. Welcome back after a long break as we meet again to keep you informed and to have you participate if you wish to on our program that has been hosted, of course, the second Thursdays and last Thursdays of every month. And tonight we have with us, and before I introduce our guest here tonight, let me just take this opportunity to actually commend and to compliment the police chief and his staff, and also the custom officers who did a splendid job in order to ensure that the people who came to celebrate with us during, of course, the celebration of our 3 nights of Creole Festival. And they came from various localities in the region, of course, and across the world. And from what I was told, that you guys are almost seamless in the manner in which the people were actually processed. I want to also compliment the Minister for Tourism and also staff because to put on the program. Actually, these 3 nights were very, very intense, activities, and to have so many people congregating in one space and to have had it done in such a splendid manner, I think everybody should be very much glad as to how the actual festivities so far have unfolded. Tonight we have before us the Chief of Police, and we'll be discussing another topic of great importance. What we try to do on this program when we meet is to try to educate the public, because we are convinced that a more informed public will better serve the country. And of course, we will be looking at tonight the Public Order Act from a law enforcement standpoint, insofar as it relates to one or group of people who are planning to have a procession, namely a protest action or a march. What is the procedure in order to host a lawful procession, namely a lawful protest action or a lawful march? We may want to if we have time, we will also look at the Riot Act and to look at some of the relevant sections as to when a protest action can actually transition into a riot, and the procedure that the police has to follow in order to ensure that the police is actually correct insofar as ensuring that they follow the procedure that is actually outlined, namely under Section 4 of the Riot Act, what really constitute a riot within the context and definition of a riot insofar as the law is concerned. So we have before us the Acting Chief of Police. Good evening, sir. Tell us something about yourself. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Minister. My name is Davidson Valerie.
Can you come closer, please, to the mic? Then?
My name is Davidson Valerie, Acting Chief of Police of the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to speak to the public on the topics mentioned, the Riot Act, and indeed public order. These I believe are important and pertinent even at this moment. It's worth the discussion tonight, so I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
And then if we have time, you can always call and ask a question or make a contribution. The intention there is to have a discussion, and the intention is not to litigate on this program here tonight any live matter that is before the court. But we are there for the express purpose of educating the public and to ensure, because this is a peaceful country and the Dominicans are law-abiding, and there's some misconception within the public space as to when a protest action actually is lawful, and what one needs to do in order to ensure that you're covered by the law and that the activity in which you have engaged yourself is not unlawful. So, Mr. Valerie, before we go into the actual discussion here tonight, and we are speaking from a law enforcement standpoint, from your standpoint, as a Chief of Police, what, of course, you have to ensure is done, and to ensure also the public interest is preserved and protected when you make a determination as to whether to grant permission or not to do so. And so tell us something about yourself, Mr. Valerie.
Well, as Chief of Police, acting.
Before you go to just tell us something about yourself.
Okay, I am the Acting Chief of Police. For your information, I assumed this position in January this year, and I'm acting until the end of the year. Clearly, I have served this organization for about 38 years, having gone through various ranks of the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force. I spent a greater part of my career in investigations, intelligence, and operations. But indeed, it has been a wonderful experience throughout the organization, learning the different aspects of the job and coming to bring these training and exercises and all that I have gotten to bear now at the rank of Chief of Police. It is indeed an awesome responsibility, but it is in fact rewarding and challenging, and provides, of course, a wealth of experience for anyone who would be at the helm as chief.
Okay, can you give us an idea, an insight, if you so wished, as to the various departments you have worked over the years before you actually assumed the rank of Acting Chief of Police?
Yeah, well, I sort of indicated that, but yes, I can. When I joined the force in 1986, I was attached to the SSU, Special Service Unit, for a short while. Then went to work at the Roseau Station for a few months. And then I went to work in the out districts for over a year plus. And after that, I returned to the SSU, where I worked for a number of years. From the SSU, I proceeded to the Criminal Investigations Department, where I worked and became sergeant. Then I moved on to the Special Branch Unit, where I served as sergeant and also inspector, the Intelligence Department. And after a number of years, I went back to the Criminal Investigations Department, where I headed the Criminal Investigations Department for a few years. I then became the acting deputy. Subsequently, I became the Assistant Commissioner of Police. That was a few years ago. And now I am acting Chief of Police.
So you have been around, you have been up the ranks, and of course, as I've said before, you bring to the job that you currently hold, the position, that you currently hold, a wealth of experience and expertise. And I know that tonight you're going to give a good account of yourself as we seek to actually look at those two very important pieces of legislation. Chief, let us first begin and to give your perspective as to in terms of, before we go into that, the fundamentals of what we're talking about tonight, and your perspective as to and calling on the nation to embrace that sense of law and order and peace that Dominica is known to exhibit over the years. And you have been around, you have traversed the region. You have an understanding as to what transpires in other countries in terms as to the level of crimes and the level of normalcy or lack thereof in the various parts of the region. How would you put Dominica in so far as it relates to that sense of normalcy in terms of law and order and the kind of peaceful environment that Dominica is known to exhibit over the years?
Yeah, well, one of the perhaps we can say the advantages that we have as a small country is that our population provides the opportunity for us to know a lot of our people. And we as police officers, many times when reports are made, we are able to get assistance one way or the other to investigate matters and to resolve issues. But we can clearly say that over the years, we have been able to manage our crime level in Dominica. And it doesn't come easy. It comes with a commitment to the task by the police. It comes with dedication, but it also comes with a high level of support from our communities. The thing is, for us in Dominica, we will succeed in our fight in crime once there is the public support and the commitment of law enforcement officers to execute their functions. We see that in many other Caribbean countries where the crime has escalated. It is primarily because there is a challenge in those countries, from my understanding, where there is not the perhaps the commitment, there is not the support from the public, or things have escalated to the point where it has become almost irreversible. And so we see in many of our Caribbean countries the extent and the volume of crimes that have gone on in some of the countries. And Dominica, I can clearly say, has not reached the level of many of the countries that I've seen and I've known of. And I speak with law enforcement officers in other countries who talk about the challenges that they face with the violence and criminal activities and gun crimes, and all of which is of course posing a tremendous challenge for the police forces in the region. We in Dominica do not have to get to that point. I believe if we have a police force that is committed to the fight on crimes, if we have a population that is supportive of the police, we can, of course, keep crimes at its minimal. And that is our endeavor, that is our effort in Dominica. We will use whatever necessary means available to us to ensure that crimes are kept down in Dominica. Because we certainly know the ills and the disadvantage of any country that suffers from criminal activities.
Certainly, we in Dominica also, we are not immune to the reality of gun crime. So we had our challenges. Of course, I say have. We have our challenges. Of course, I use the word hard because a few years ago we had quite a number of gun-related incidents which resulted, unfortunately, to untimely deaths. But we have seen this year so far that it's not as significant as the previous years. But we still have to continue to apply the pressure and to be consistent from a law enforcement standpoint. And of course, society as a whole has a role to play also to assist the police, and because there has to be a societal response to the whole approach. But I wanted us to just to make a reference to that. And of course, we have seen over the years a dramatic drop in a number of serious offences, burglary, and to an extent we have seen some drop too, as it relates to indecent assault and other serious crimes. But that we will leave for another program as we seek to do a comparative analysis of the various types of crimes or kinds of crimes over the years, and to see how we have seen a pattern in terms of certain specific serious crimes over the years, making a dramatic shift downwards. And I think that we as a country have to be mindful of that and also make mention of the good things that we're doing, not only the bad things that we're doing. But we have seen over the years, Mr. Commissioner, even before you were Commissioner of Police, but you were the Assistant Commissioner of Police with specific responsibility for operations and crime. We have seen over the years a number of protest actions that have taken place over the years, and the police force has been able on a consistent basis to demonstrate a certain level of calmness in terms of its approach to actually responding to some of these actions that, of course, can be characterized as unlawful. And just give the public an appreciation as to, insofar as the Public Order Act is concerned, firstly, just give us an idea as to what is the specific piece of legislation that we're making reference to, and to give us an appreciation as to what is expected of a group of person or a person making an application or seeking to have a protest action or demonstration, how you want to call it, making an application or seeking permission on behalf of a group of people. But what are the requirements and what are the procedures to be followed?
Yes, clearly we are speaking of Chapter 1501, which is the Public Order Act of Dominica, 1501 of the Laws of Dominica of 2000, Consolidated Laws of Dominica of 2017. And this Public Order Act stipulates the measures that must be adhered to if anyone is interested in having a procession. Now, clearly, the law tells us that a procession, of course, it means a match. It could mean somebody wants to have a match, somebody wants to have a demonstration, somebody wants to have a procession in a public place. All right? And indeed, it tells us that a public place is any road, any public road, any highway, right? Any park, anywhere, any place that the public has access to, any garden, any beach. So really, if you want to have a procession in a public place, then it is the law demands that permission must be granted by the chief of police to have the procession. Now, you may say you want to have a procession in Roseau or Goodwill, wherever it is that you may choose in a public place. The law requires you to, within no less than 3 days before you embark on your procession or your activity, you should write to seek permission from the Commissioner of Police.
If you were to just take a pause for a minute and maybe to it's important for us for you to try to give the public an appreciation that the intention of the law is not to prevent or to prohibit any protest action or any procession or any march, because the law defines a procession as a march or a protest. But maybe you want to tell us as to the reason for that, and of course the police would have to put systems in place to ensure that the people who want to proceed with the march or the protest action can be provided for insofar as the protection of the police is concerned. And likewise, other members of the public who may not have an interest in the march that you're holding or the procession that or the protest action that you're holding, but they too have the right to go on the normal daily activity, to go to the store, to go to the doctor, to go to work, to go to the bank. So maybe you want to expound on that a bit.
Yes, sir. The Constitution, our Constitution gives the right to people for freedom of movement, freedom of association, freedom of speech. But this right itself, while these are fundamental rights, these laws, these rights are subject to the rights of others. So, while it is necessary, it may be necessary for someone to have the march, or to have the protest, or to have the procession, there must be consideration given to those persons who are not part of your march or part of your procession. People who have their rights under the Constitution to go about their lawful business unimpeded, unhindered. And therefore, this is the reasons. This is the reason why there is a requirement under the Public Order Act to allow people to operate without hindering the rights or obstructing the rights of others. So a person who wishes to have, or a group of people who wish to have a procession would be required to understand that while you may be allowed to have the procession, your procession must not unduly prevent or affect other persons from their lawful business and their rights to the constitutional rights as well on the island.
Okay, I think you're making a very important point there. If you reference specifically to Section 11 of the Constitution, Section 11.1, that speaks to the whole issue of freedom of assembly and association. But if you were to read subsection 2, which creates a facility, is an exception clause. That places a limit. So there are limitations to that protected freedom of expression, of freedom of someone to assembly or association, or freedom of movement. And the Constitution itself creates certain limitations, which are actually under subsection 2. If you were to go, and the appropriate section we're referring to would be someone's right to freedom, somebody's protected right, insofar as freedom of association and freedom of assembly is concerned. But of course, if you were to go to subsection 2, it tells you that notwithstanding, that freedom is not really considered to be impacted if a law is in place for the purpose of protecting the public interest and public safety. public morality.
Right.
You see? So that is why you have, of course, laws like the Public Order Act to ensure that those protected rights that you have, with limitations, of course, and for the express purpose of not infringing on other people's own right to move around freely or to go to the normal daily routine activities. So I think it's something that needs to be explained, and so when you talk about the Public Order Act, it's not something that says that people cannot protest. It's not something that says that people cannot march. Isn't that
Right.
what you're trying to say?
Right.
Right. Okay. Fine.
Right. So, right, you're correct, sir. It doesn't say you cannot march. It doesn't say you cannot protest. The fact is, it has to be, we have to have it, it has to be managed.
Mm-hmm.
There must be authority sought for the exercise of that right that you have. So while a person has a right to have a meeting, have a protest, have an activity, that right does not allow him the right to prevent another person from their lawful business.
Okay. Again, you have had instances, and you may have instances where people gather, and you know it's a protest action.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's a march, but it is peaceful. But permission was not sought by the organizers. Would you define that as though peaceful but unlawful?
Yes, indeed.
Right.
It is. Yes. A procession can be peaceful, very peaceful, but it can be peaceful and unlawful.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is unlawful because, one, the process was not adhered to. So a person who wishes to have a procession, a group of people who wish to have a procession, if they gather on the streets because they are quiet, that doesn't make it lawful. Because they are peaceful on the streets doesn't make it lawful. It becomes lawful when the permission, the rightful process of seeking a permission from the chief of police is obtained. And that permission has to be in writing, specifying a number of things. It must specify the place in which this procession is going to take place, where it is going to begin and where it is going to end. It must also state the times between which it is going to start and the times in which it is going to end. Additionally, it has to say also the route that it has to follow. So one is given, yes, now it is lawful, you have sought permission from the chief has agreed to permit. And so your procession or your march is lawful. But there's also another part to it.
Mm-hmm.
If you seek permission from the chief of police, and the chief of police, for some reason, is not satisfied that he should permit, he will therefore forward the request for recommendation to the Minister of National Security. So if the chief of police do not agree that this procession should take place, I will inform the minister in writing of my reasons why I do not approve the procession or the march. The Minister of National Security will look at the decision of the chief, and he, in his own deliberate judgment, will determine whether he is going to approve or not approve the march, whether he will agree with the chief of police or whether he will not agree with the chief of police. And if so, he informs the chief of police in writing what his position is. So if he agrees that despite the chief disagreement to have the process, the match, he agrees that the match should take place, then the chief of police will write to the applicants informing them of the approval of the match.
Let us suppose that a group on behalf of a person on behalf of a group has made an application for a march or a protest action, and the chief approves of either the march or the protest action. Now, let us suppose somewhere during the unfolding of that event on the ground, it is observed by the law enforcement officers that there are some elements of disorder or disorderly conduct. What are the measures the police can take in order to mitigate against those activities, even if, let us suppose, that permission were granted, but certain activities that took place and within the judgment of the police can actually escalate into an explosive situation? What are some of the measures the police can take to actually bring order or to that protest or march that's taking place?
Yeah. If for one, if the permission has been granted, everything seems peaceful, but then something happens. The procession goes out of the route recommended by the police.
Right.
The police have the right to intervene immediately and to order the procession to maintain the route that has been instructed or ordered. And if the procession decides to do otherwise, then they would be in breach of the permission granted and a breach of the Public Order Act. If the procession goes beyond the time that has been granted of the procession, then the procession also is in breach of the Public Order Act, in which the police will intervene and bring the activity to an end. So, and then we have this situation where within the activity itself, while activities are going on, there may be instances of, for instance, offensive weapons seen, or persons conducting themselves disorderly, or statements of violence and threats being made. The police can intervene, or should intervene immediately, and bring all of these situations to a halt. They will prefer charges the persons who are in violation of the order, the public order, in terms of their statements of threat, or statements of violence, or possession of items that can lead to breach of the peace, or conduct that is likely to bring a breach of the peace or occasion the breach of the peace. The police have the right to intervene and to arrest the persons who are involved in the illegal act.
Okay, great stuff, Chief. We are going to take just a short break there, and just to maintain your thoughts for a while. And the number to call is 1-800-327, or you may want to call on 448-3284. And we're talking to the Chief of Police on two very important matters. When we come back, Chief, maybe we want to get as to when does a situation actually get to the point of a riot, and what are some of the implications, and what are the procedures to be followed by the police, and what actually constitutes a riot within the definition of the law itself. And so we're going to come back to the Chief in a while. In the meantime, let's just listen, as we still in this mood of celebrating our independence. 46 years. We have done well over the years, Mr. Valerie.
Yes, indeed.
46 years, and the 3rd of this month, which is Sunday, is going to be a big day for us in Dominica as we celebrate 46 years of independence.
And I know good will conquer evil. Jah is here amidst the battle. And I know love will overcome hatred. Oh yeah, living in the positive. Oh children, let not your hearts be troubled. Wipe away your tears and fears. 'Cause I know love will conquer evil. Oh, oh yeah. And even through my darkest nights, oh, fear not, Jah is on my side to protect I. Oh yeah. And even though the rods are against I, Lord, 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 yeah. Fear not, though my chances are slim. Yet my hopes are so high. Living in the positive. And I know good will conquer evil. Jah is here amidst the battle. And I know love will overcome hatred. Oh yeah, living in the positive. Oh children, let not your hearts be troubled. Wipe away your tears and fears. 'Cause I know love will conquer evil. Oh. Oh, oh, yeah. Even when my burden gets heavy to carry, oh, yeah. And sorrows become.
Yes, we're back, and thank you very much for taking time to listen to us this evening. And those of you following us on Facebook, DBS Radio Facebook page, and those of you listening live via the radio. Of course, good evening to some of our listeners in St. Thomas. Good evening to Mr. Edmund Charles, ruler from the city of Maho. Good evening to you, sir. And Sarah, all those of you listening and following DBS Radio and this program here tonight. Thank you very much for keeping tuned to the number one station, DBS Radio. Chief, now, as we migrate to our next very interesting area of the discussion here tonight, and I'm certain that a number of people who are listening may have some interest in what you're about to say. Mm-hmm. And so we have a situation, then you have a gathering, or you have a situation unfolding on the ground. Could have been, permission could have been granted, but certain things are happening, mm-hmm. which are actually outside of what was actually approved, and maybe starting to encroach on public order or lack thereof. And when does it become a situation when it graduates to a situation where it becomes a riot? And maybe you want to refer to the specific piece of legislation that you're making reference to.
Yes, sir. As you rightly said, we have an occasion where a group of people decide to have a march or a procession, lawfully granted permission to do their march. But along the way, that group of people begin to conduct themselves in a riotous way. In other words, they begin to behave disorderly. Now, the Riot Act under Section 10(2).
No, you're talking about Chapter 1002.
1002 of the Revised Laws of Dominic of 2017 clearly speaks to what constitutes the riotous actions of people. It is an act relating to the riots and unlawful tumultuous assemblies. So people who may gather for what would have been considered a lawful march or lawful procession have suddenly begun to be riotous or unlawful, begin to become violent, begin to be a threat to the public, to the public peace, and they begin to become tumultuous in their actions. Disorder. Tumultuous means disorder. So you will say, but what really is a riot? And from the definition we have of riot is violent public disorder. Right? When it becomes tumultuous, disturbances of the public peace, where you have more than 12 persons involved in that sort of activity.
And that is important. So, I mean, that's why we want to actually also qualify the discussion here tonight. So it has to be 12 and more. 12 and more persons, right? Conducting themselves in a disorderly manner, disturbing the public peace. That in itself becomes riotous. And therefore, the Act 1002 of 2017 speaks clearly as to how this matter has to be handled. So once we have 12 or more persons assembling in a location and creating disorder and behaving riotously, the police must intervene to ensure that the public peace is maintained and that law and order is put in proper perspective at that occasion. Okay, so what specifically then the police needs to do within the prescription of the law itself? I believe it's under Section 4 of the Riot Act. What specifically, in the event there is such a situation that you just described, and the police want to bring order, and a mob-like environment is emerging, a riot then is emerging, and the police wants to bring it under control, or wants the crowd to disperse. What then is the action of the police? What action the police should take in order to ensure that crowd that has actually escalated, the behavior of people in that crowd that have escalated into a situation that's a riot, and then, if not brought under control, can have tremendous public implication insofar as the public safety is concerned. What are some of the things that the police must do?
Yes. Clearly, the police, well, we say the police, but the law, in fact, says that a magistrate or a justice of the peace or a senior police officer who is present at the time when the disorder is taking place, that senior police officer or the magistrate or the justice of peace must make a proclamation. And you may ask, what is a proclamation? But a proclamation is an order warning the public, the gathering, or the mob, or the persons of this order.
I think we need to qualify that. And you acted on behalf of whom?
On the president, on behalf of the president.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right? An order that the police, the senior police officer, or the magistrate, or the justice of peace must make to the mob or the crowd that is gathered. And that order is from the president. Okay? And the order must be read to the people who are gathered, warning them of the need to disperse. Now, I will tell you exactly what the proclamation is, and I can tell you it says. In case in Dominica we have a female president, so it's Her Excellency, but it reads, His Excellency the President charges and commands all persons being assembled immediately to disperse themselves and peaceably to depart to their homes or to their lawful business upon pains contained in the Riot Act by command of the President. And perhaps I should probably say it again so we can get it clearly. His Excellency the President, or Her Excellency the President, charges and commands all persons being assembled immediately to disperse themselves and peaceably to depart to their homes or to their lawful business upon the pains contained in the Riot Act by command of the President. So this proclamation...
That's on the Section 4?
Yes, sir. Right? This proclamation is read to the mob or the persons who have been conducting themselves riotously.
Now, let us suppose, okay, and then, so if the crowd fails to comply with that order or that proclamation, as it is legally referred to in the law, the police then has to use the officers on the ground, having done the assessment, would have to reasonably respond in order to disperse the crowd.
Indeed. Now the crowd, the proclamation is read. The officer is expected to utilize a loud hailer, some medium by which the voice can be projected and the message can be heard clearly. Now the law tells you that no one should prohibit or inhibit the reading of the proclamation. Anybody who seeks to inhibit or prevent the message from being read commits an offense.
And what is very instructive that point that you're making. And in the event, what is the penalty, or if somebody were to be convicted, somebody was trying to disrupt, and the person for actually reading a proclamation, or somebody charged under Section 4. And in that regard, what is the penalty? What is the prison sentence?
The law makes provision for that an offense once a person is assembled, once a person behaves riotously, and once there is an obstruction of the reading of the proclamation. Let me just confirm. Let me see if I can record. But I don't
on the Section
exactly.
5,
but I know there's 2 years sentence for people who are assembled illegally. People who act riotously. There's a 3-year sentence, and these matters are indictable.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not heard by a magistrate. It's heard by a judge.
Yeah. And then the specific reference you're making to Section 4 in that regard will be 5 years, a 5-year prison sentence, if my recollection is right. And so, under Section 4. And so that is a very serious matter, because if you, in fact, there's some transmitting an information on behalf of the highest office of the land, which is was the president. And then, of course, it's important for those kind of issues to be actually explained to the public. And this has been done for the purpose of trying to give us, all of us, a better appreciation as to our laws on the books and how the laws are actually applied. And all those things are being done for the express purpose of preserving the public peace and preserving our safety as a peaceful country. And I believe that over the years and in the recent past, we have been hearing so many different renditions throughout the various media platforms, social media and radio, etc. And so a number of those renditions that we're hearing are actually not correct. And I think it should not be the responsibility of the police or the ministry, but all well-intended citizens, people who are first, people who are actually should be voices of reason, people who are educated on the fundamentals of the law, and who actually ought to be our duty to stand for law and order, to stand for country, and to stand for peace, not an aspiration, but a duty. Also have that responsibility to come out and try to educate the public, because when you do that, because a number of times people do things and say things out of ignorance. And those things, of course, help to define the democratic process. Mm-hmm. And but also there's good to be had for those people, those of us who have some knowledge and to come out and to edify the public, because that would help to prevent people exposing themselves to harm. Because it takes us to the next point. And then you read the proclamation, Mr. Commissioner of the Police, yes, or the senior officer on the ground, the most senior one on the ground. And then you ask the crowd to disperse. And then the crowd does not. The police then, therefore, may have to take certain action that should be reasonable, given the circumstances on the ground.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yes. Once the proclamation has been read, the crowd, the mob, the gathering is expected to disperse, because that's the instructions given, that they must disperse to their respective homes or their lawful business. Now, after an hour of that proclamation, after an hour of that proclamation being read, anyone who remains at the location will be arrested and should be arrested by the police. Now, the police will utilize the necessary measures and means to disperse the crowd. Once the order has been given, an hour is passed, and people remain in the conduct at the location. It is the role, the duty of the police to disperse the crowd utilizing the necessary means, whatever necessary means. And so, in the process, the police have the right to arrest, apprehend, seize anybody who has been involved, who have remained at the location, and take them into custody for prosecution. Now, just to recap a bit, when we spoke about the obstruction of the proclamation, Mr. Minister, you're very correct with the 5 years penalty sentence, right? But once a person is arrested, the person must be prosecuted. This becomes this is an indictable matter, and it is to be heard before a judge and jury. So, yes, the police will act, the police will apprehend, the police will disperse the crowd with whatever means necessary to ensure this order is brought back and that there is a sense of safety and security in the community.
Let me say good evening to some of our listeners and those of you following on Facebook also. Good evening, Mr. Albino. Good evening to Mr. The Night Rider, Mr. Bruno, the Night Rider, former police officer, resident in one of the nicest parts of Dominica in Slovenia. Good evening to you, Mr. Knight, and your wife. Yes, so there have been instances, Mr. Commissioner of Police, but the police had to invoke, the law so far as the Riot Act is concerned. And the police responded. And in all of those instances, permission was not granted. Sorry. And then the police had to take certain action. There was a certain situation, I think, in 2018 on Castle Street, Roseau. And what was supposed to have been a meeting, it was actually advertised to have been a meeting, but of course on the public road. And then the police took certain action and tried to bring the activity to a halt because it was promoted to end at 4, and notwithstanding the fact permission was not granted by the chief, the police did not stop it from actually taking place, except when things seemingly went out of control. And just briefly to take us back to that, and in terms of how, of course, because having read the proclamation, and you made reference after the proclamation has been read, the police, okay, you wait an hour, and thereafter the police will attempt to do what is reasonable to disperse the crowd. And so the law outlines, almost by way of precision, you understand, what the police has to do, and to demonstrate a sense of discretion and a sense of reason. I think that the law in itself, the way it is written, is deliberate by way of intention. Mm-hmm. Now, if we go back to what transpired then, and the reasonable action that the police took, and that in itself is more or less a test case. Yes. Okay, to what you have just made reference to. And we, of course, the court did rule that the police acted reasonably, and then the gathering was unlawful. Do you want to just, before we close, we're approaching 9:30, just briefly touch on that?
Yeah. The incident warranted the police to take a course of action, and so tear gas was used on that occasion to disperse the crowd that had gathered, and persons who were affected or who were part of the gathering felt it was their lawful right to gather, to have their meeting, and to block the road, which of course the police sought to stop, to prevent. So if a person is having their meeting, already it is unlawful. The gathering is unlawful because it's a protest action. It's a procession that is not been given permission of the chief, and to have a riotous conduct at that event also is worsening the situation. And so the police who acted at the time have been deemed to have acted correctly because they had utilized tear gas to disperse the crowd. Now, I would say here that once the proclamation has been read, the people who insist on remaining at the activity or continuing to behave riotously will be arrested by the police. And in the process of arresting these people, apprehending these people, if any one of these people gets injured or is killed through the process of the police action, the police cannot be held accountable if they acted rightly and discretionately in effecting the actions.
But I want to just add,
by law.
I want to add that is a situation whereby that we do not want to advocate the usage of any lethal force. And, that's not the intention of the program here. But I think you're just highlighting a scenario that can emerge, as I'm saying. And certainly we're not trying to promote either as a government or on this program here that the police will go out with an intention, okay, to use lethal force against its citizens, except in an extraordinary, versatile, and highly uncivilized or warlike kind of situation. So that I believe we just need to actually lay that on the table here tonight. That's not the intention. But
certainly,
I think
the police don't intend to.
I think you're making reference to the police. If the police were to act,
right,
once you have followed that the steps,
right,
and they got into a situation where certain actions have to be taken, because if a lethal force, if live wrongs are fired at the police, that kind of situation, we're hoping that will never happen. We don't want that to happen. Don't want that to happen at all. And so we are very much grateful for the fact that we have not gotten to the point, and we're hoping that will never happen. Well, and that's not the intention of this administration.
And certainly the police have in the past exercised tremendous discretion and have displayed and demonstrated tremendous patience and have shown our ability to operate under pressure and ensure that all ends well.
Yeah, but certainly what is actually coming out from this discussion here tonight is that the situation whereby the law stipulates certain actions to be taken and certain procedures to be followed, and then the possibility of people not exposing themselves to undue legal jeopardy or any possible injury as a result of an activity that have gotten out of control, and then and where the police or the state may be under attack to the extent to which lives are threatened by way of actions being taken by a mob, or so we're not hoping that for that to happen. We have emerged in this country over the years. We have gotten much more enlightened, much more civilized, and we're hoping that environment can continue. And certainly people have a right. People should, in a democratic space, people should express themselves. But what we are advocating is to take the course and to embrace the course of following the legal route, Mr. Commissioner.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that is what we're hoping, that once people could apply to the chief of police, get the necessary permission to have their protest, the demonstration, or their march, whatever it is, then it is their responsibility to conduct themselves orderly along the route, wherever that has been granted to them, that they should stick within the route that has been permitted. They must stick within the time that they have been permitted, and ensure that the law is obeyed at all times, that there is no breach of the peace, the public peace, and that there is order in the activities that they take part in. And I think that is what the objective of the act is all about, so that the Public Order Act will ensure that other people's rights are not infringed upon by those who would wish to advocate for their own concerns, or to be given the opportunity to represent their concerns in public.
And certainly there have been instances where the police have almost turned a blind eye on activities which are certainly march or protest action where permission was not sought, and the police have in the past almost turned a blind eye. And there have been instances where in the recent past permission, or several occasions, permissions have been sought and permission have been granted. Chief, is not so?
Yes. Permission. There are instances where many instances where permission have been sought and permission have been granted. and the police have been present to police the activity to ensure that those who wish to march or to protest do get the very security of the police to do that safely and to ensure that they are given an opportunity to voice their concerns.
Yes, and I want to just, it's not something that, as I said, the intention is not to litigate any specific matter here tonight, especially any matter that is live before the court, which is a live matter before the court. But we have seen, Chief, over the years, you have this Wednesday walk, and you still, sometimes the police provided, ensured that they went out to ensure that there was public order, but there was no permission sought, and the police never once tried to notwithstanding the fact that permission was not sought. The police are never, which of course is a match,
Right.
And it's there are times when you don't have to tell people no. So but there are times when they started, attempts were made to remove the police barriers, and people came right in front of police headquarters and shaking. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I think that looking at the situation as it has unfolded on the ground, as it pertains to protest action or marches, you have seen that the police have been very tolerant, Chief, over the years.
Yes, sir. The police have been very, very tolerant, and it's not that an offense has not been committed, but the police have adopted a process by which we look at the gravity of the situation and the implications of the actions of those who are involved to determine whether the public order is maintained, whether public peace is being maintained, and to ensure that we don't appear to be heavy-handed in our response to what some of members of the public are involved in. There have been many instances when the police have been challenged in public, when the police have gone out to adopt certain positions and certain postures. But we have been tolerant, and I can clearly say we have been tolerant with the public in many instances.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we are now 25 minutes to 10 o'clock as we're coming to an end of this program for this evening. We're still in this mood of celebration as we get closer to the big day. 46 years as an independent country. And those of you who are listening, thank you again for being with us here tonight. We'll be back on the first day, God's willing, of next month, and as we continue to educate and to edify the public matters relating to the manner in which the Ministry of National Security and Legal Affairs functions, and what we do on behalf of the government insofar as enacting its policies. And so tonight we had the Acting Chief of Police, and I want to thank you, sir, for the service you have given to the country so far. It's not an easy profession to be part of. It is noble also, and very laudable. But before we depart here tonight, and if you want to call, and before we leave, you can do so. There's some indication from some people that if they want to have a public meeting, even if the meeting is on a public road, that may require the diversion of traffic flow, and then you may obstruct traffic. A public road is a public thoroughfare, isn't it so?
Yes.
And they do not have to get permission from the police. How do you look at that?
Well, a group of people who wish to have a meeting on an area that is not a public road or public thoroughfare do not require the permission from the Chief of Police. But if anyone is to have a meeting on a road where the public is expected to pass, where the traffic is expected to be hindered or impeded in some way or the other, then clearly, as the traffic commissioner, any diversion or any allowance to block the road to accommodate the meeting has to be given by the chief of police.
Yeah, I think it's important. We were actually looking at the Public Order Act, and we made reference to the Riot Act, insofar as it relates to unlawful conduct and unlawful gathering, etc. But we have not explored, which of course, at some other point, maybe we'll invite some lawyers there and to look at even beyond the Public Order Act and the Riot Act, but the powers given to a police officer under the Police Act 1401. Mm-hmm. And if you were to make specific reference to Section 12(1)(f), that actually mandates the police to maintain public order in public places and in public meetings and in meetings. And I think this is an absolute responsibility of the police, even outside of the Public Order Act. That is specifically provision is made in the Police Act 1401.
Yeah.
And those of you listening can make specific reference to, can refer to 1401 and refer to Section 14(1)(f). And you see stipulating throughout that section, Chief, the vast responsibility and mandate of a police officer. And
yes,
a police officer
is preserving the public peace and decorum in the public
a police
space.
officer on duty can enter any place of amusement. Understand?
Yes.
That the public, you have access to the public, you go into a disco to dance and etc. A police officer on duty can enter that place without having to pay.
Right.
Understand?
Right.
With a view of putting order in that place. And I think it is incumbent on those with the knowledge to be value free in the way they express themselves, in the way they seek to interface with the public, and in the way they seek to educate the public. Because when that is done, all of us benefit. Society on a whole benefit, and we're going to have a better country. Mm-hmm. So I think it is our responsibility and duty to do all what we can, if we are so able, to impact that knowledge on the members of the public, so to get a better understanding. Because certainly it's not only because, so if you want to make reference that to say, okay, that if you were to go under the Public Order Act and you want to look at the way procession is defined, a protest, a march, and you say it does not cover a meeting. But let's look at that. Let us suppose you have what is supposed to be a meeting, right? And then you have a gathering of 100 people, 10, 20 people, 40 people. But there are placards, the same thing. So certainly that is not a meeting.
Right.
You get my point? There are placards, the same thing. There are banners. So that is a protest, isn't that so? So and then you have a vast crowd of 300-400 people, and chanting and saying the different things. That is not a meeting.
There's not a meeting.
Okay, so there are certain things that are unfolding within the activity itself, the event. Because certainly people can be very, very smart that they say, I'm going to have a meeting, but of course they won't have a protest. So I think we have so much to learn from each other and so much to contribute to this beautiful country. So Chief, your final thoughts, and thank you again for coming.
Yeah.
And thank you to our many listeners. I see we have, Chief, a number of people following on Facebook. And although we're in a festive mood, well, not me, but people in a festive mood, but we felt that we have to maintain our program. And so to come in here tonight, and with God's willing, we're going to return on the second Thursday of next month. Chief, your final thoughts.
Yes. It is instructive that the public appreciate the Public Order Act, which of course is a guide and sort of a directive to us as to how we ought to operate when we want to have a public activity such as a march, a procession, or a demonstration. These are things that we see in our communities and societies in the past, and we will see it again. And so it is instructive that we pay attention to what must be done and how it must be done, so that we can live peaceably in our communities, so that the police, the assistance of the police can be sought, and we can ensure that once the processions or the demonstrations, whatever they are done, are held, that there is order and there is peace, and that people can operate side by side with their activities. The public can go about their normal business without being unnecessarily hindered, and so too those who wish to protest or wish to have their march can have their march, and ensure that their concerns are advanced in a way that maintains order and discipline in our society. If we allow our order to break, if we allow ill discipline to take place in our communities, in our society, we run the risk of endangering our very peace in Dominica and inhibiting our progress in many ways in Dominica, and creating an atmosphere and indeed a culture that we would have to live to regret in the future. So it is good that we adhere to the laws and seek direction and adherence to the laws as it relates to these matters.
Okay, good evening to our listeners and those of you following on Facebook. Chief, before we go, there have been some people are making some comments there. We have Hyacinth Lawrence. Good evening to you. Too much tolerance, Chief. You're saying too much tolerance. So we see, as soon as the crime shows up, according to the listener and the follower, you should stop. So asking now, that's the person's opinion. Don't wait until the police loses his life. That's what the person is saying. Put criminals in their place. And more than 2 weeks now, and no one has been charged. No one is charged. I guess they're referring to the recent matter. But again, that is something, as we said, we do not want to specifically litigate an issue here tonight, except to say, Chief, one of the things that we forgot to make mention of when we're referring to such crimes committed under the, we read the certain aspects of the Riot Act itself. How long after the commission of an alleged crime that someone can be charged? I think it's up to 12 months.
12 months.
Okay, yeah.
12 months.
Right, that is important.
So begin the proceedings with
right.
intent.
So criminal proceedings, you have until a year so to do. Well, I was just making reference because somebody's asking too. It has been 2 weeks now and no one has been charged. We're not serious. But that, of course, that is the wonderful thing of a democratic space, and people have a right to express their opinion. Good evening to my good friend on Campbell Road, and making a comment there which I'll not so nice to have you listening. She's saying there too unruly, and so a number of people following there and giving the comments, Chief. So thank you again. Again, thank you to our wonderful listeners. Those of you, of course, as I said, who listen from your homes, those of you driving, and those of you who listen from your home, from your workplaces, and a number of you listening from overseas. Thank you very much for tuning in and listening to your number one station. And Chief, thank you very much for taking time off your busy schedule to come here tonight. And I think that you did a very good job. Being the first time on this program. We were expecting another guest, but of course we were able to move on, notwithstanding, and you were very well prepared here tonight. And thank you very much. Good evening again to our listeners, and continue listening to your number one station, The Breast Radio. See you again on the second Thursday of the other month, next month, for another program of course, we'll be talking about another very important topic. And of course, we always try our best to make it interesting and make it very instructive so that our listeners who listened benefited, and of course is much more informed and better prepared to contribute towards his or her country's development. Thank you very much. Our listeners, good evening, Mr. Commissioner, Acting Chief of Police, good evening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Living in the positive, and I know good will conquer evil. Jah is here amidst the battle, and I know love will overcome hatred. Oh yeah, living in the positive. Oh children, let not your hearts be troubled. Wipe away your tears and fears, 'cause I know love will conquer evil. Oh yeah, and even through my darkest nights, oh, fear not, Jah is on my side to protect I. Oh yeah, and even though the rods are against side, Lord, 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 yeah. Fear not, though my chances are slim, yet my hopes are so high. Living in the positive.